Many in our community face strained family ties, and for most of us, the traditional ways of passing down wealth through children or family inheritance just simply don't exist.
We've lost an entire generation of LGBTQ plus people to the devastating effects of HIV and AIDS, leaving behind a gap of mentorship, guidance, and wealth transfer.
These are just a few reasons why generational wealth has been missing from our community, but it's time to break that cycle. That's why you're tuned in to Queer Money episode 556, and today we're laying out 5 actionable steps for gay GenXers to plant seeds of wealth for future generations of queer people.
So let's get started.
The mission of Queer Money is to financially empower the LGBTQ plus community. Join us in thanking Capital One for supporting that mission.
So a common theme that's come up a lot recently, it feels like, on the Queer Money podcast, our Yahoo Finance show, and hearing from listeners and viewers of both shows, is that we've lost a whole generation of prospective role models because of the HIV/AIDS crisis. So we don't have people to show us what it's like to grow old as a queer person, for people to invest and save money like a queer person, or to pass on generational wealth from one queer person to the next. So it seems like there's a sort of dearth of examples for our community.
Yeah.
We're kind of feeling like since we're sort of the, I guess, older generation.
Now we kind of are, although there are quite a few gay retirees, individuals who are boomers. I think one of the things that we do see is that there's this kind of traditional family path of looking to family members for knowledge or for wealth transfer. All of those kinds of things are missing from our families, especially those of us who are Gen Xers and older. Many of us, we're not a part of affirming families. We're not a part of families that either will pass down inheritance to us or even in contact with our families. And I think that has caused a feeling for many people, older folks in our community, maybe individuals who are elder millennial or older, that we just aren't quote unquote normal when it comes to the ways in which families or society has created wealth in their communities.
Yeah, and when you think about it too, we know through the work that Sage has done and through other projects that there's a whole generation of LGBTQ plus boomers who didn't think they would be alive today. So similar to their peers who did pass away, they didn't necessarily save or invest because they didn't think they were necessarily going to be around. So they're not necessarily, as a generation, an example or can provide us guidance, and they aren't necessarily a generation that can transfer wealth down to Gen Xers. So I feel like it's almost incumbent upon our generation to sort of set that tone and try to create a system that we'll talk about today to pass on generational wealth, right? We've talked on this podcast before that very often LGBTQ plus people pass away. We don't, only about 10% of us have a will or estate established. So very often, whatever we do have left over gets left to the state to decide of who's going to be the executor of your estate, no matter how small it might be. And very often it's family members who weren't necessarily affirming to begin with and are oftentimes dispersing those funds to people who aren't affirming of the LGBTQ plus community. And that money trickles into, politicians and whatnot who aren't supportive of the LGBTQ plus community. So we're kind of on this hamster wheel of always fighting against ourselves. Yeah. So we wanted to create a system today, or to start about creating a system today that can help transfer wealth from one LGBTQ plus person or couple to another LGBTQ plus person or couple. May or may not be related by blood, right. But we need to start overlooking that. Of course, we all know that we probably have a niece or a nephew or a grandchild, whomever, who might be LGBTQ plus, and so there might be a bloodline there. But we need to start thinking maybe outside of your what do they call it, your biological family, and start looking more towards your logical family in terms of transferring wealth.
Right, and the simple fact that a large percentage of us don't have children. That of U.S. same-sex couples, roughly 24% of female couples have children, and only 8% of male couples have children. And that means that there are a lot of us who don't have children, and we may, I'm not saying we will, but we may have financial advantages because of not having children, that put us into a place where we can potentially give to others who we may want to look at as our extended family, our children in the community.
Exactly. So this episode is about creating a system that generates generational wealth for LGBTQ plus people, and we're going to share our 5 favorite steps to get that started.
Yeah, but before we do, I do want to share that some of the things that we talk about here are things that a lot of folks say, well, I can't do that because I don't have a lot of money. I'm not super wealthy. I'm not, a multimillionaire or billionaire. And just one thing to keep in mind is that all of the things that we're going to talk about here are things that you can do with a much smaller amount of money. There are ways to do this. There are ways to do some of these with as little as $500 or $1,000. And I think that most of us, when we pass away, will most likely have some money, right? That will go somewhere. And so even if it's just $500 to $1,000, it's much better to pass it on to individuals in our community than let it, like as you mentioned, go to the state or go to family members who have not affirmed us.
Exactly. So David, you want to kick us off with tip number 1?
Yeah, what we're going to start with here is that idea of building wealth by helping young folks, and that is create an LGBTQ wealth building scholarship or grant. Now we know that scholarships are more often than not for individuals who are pursuing education. Grants oftentimes go to individuals who are going on some entrepreneurial path. And what these can do is really help them get started. We have conversations in the news every single day about how student loan debt is crushing our ability as a country for individuals to buy homes and start a family. Well, that affects queer people just as much as it does the general population.
Actually, according to a study from Student Loan Hero a couple of years ago, it affects LGBTQ plus graduates more than the general population.
Right. So let's help give some of our LGBTQ students a leg up by contributing to and helping build scholarships so that they actually have more of their paycheck to put towards building their own wealth.
Especially as we know that more LGBTQ plus people are fleeing states that are currently under
absolutely states of emergency.
States of emergency. So they're going to colleges that are out of state, that are more affirming. And we all know that out of state college tuition is exponentially higher than in-state college tuition.
Yeah. So how do you do this? Well, the first step that you can do is actually define what it is you want this to look like. What is the purpose or the eligibility criteria for your scholarship or grant? And then you want to secure the funding for that. And just keep in mind, this doesn't always have to be from your estate when you pass away. You can start accumulating money right now to put towards this. As I said, a $500 scholarship or $1,000 scholarship could really help a queer student. So that money is something that you can start setting aside right now. But definitely you want to partner with either a financial institution or existing nonprofit to help you manage that. That is one way of keeping the costs down for doing something like this, because they already have the systems in place and you don't necessarily have to pay for it to be created.
And you can also make sure that you're following the state and federal guidelines for managing such a nonprofit entity.
Right, exactly. Right. One of the good things is that there are actually a lot of people out there who are doing this already. So nonprofit crusader Alan Cantor said, "Friends don't let friends start a nonprofit." Now that is kind of a tongue-in-cheek, but oftentimes what we see is that people are starting and spending a lot of money starting or creating a nonprofit when there's another one out there trying to do the exact same thing, and your money could help them do their job even better, rather than both of you struggling to do the same job.
Exactly.
So some of the ones that we like are Point Foundation. They have a scholarship, the Live Out Loud scholarship, and the Gamma Mu, I think I'm saying that right, Gamma Mu Foundation scholarship.
Capital One Auto Navigator does more than just auto financing. We're here to help you find a car you love, too. Shop millions of cars from thousands of dealers nationwide. Research your favorite makes and models. Explore dealers near you and more. All on Auto Navigator.
Okay, our second recommendation here is to start a family or community trust. You can set up a family or community trust to build wealth for younger LGBTQ plus individuals to grow through contributions and provide funds when recipients reach milestones like, maybe they graduated college, and so you want to give them a leg up to be able to start their adult life, or buying their first home. We all know how expensive real estate is, and more younger folks are being left out of the real estate market, or even investing in the real estate market if they want to become real estate investors, or simply starting their own business. This can really be a fund that helps really gives people that initial boost that they need to be able to start something, whether it's a family, a real estate investing, buying a home of their own, something that they can really ideally turn into something that generates more money than what the initial investment to them would be, but it doesn't always have to be that. We know that a lot of people are committed to having a child and assume a lot of debt to be able to have that child, especially for same-sex couples. And so you can maybe help alleviate some of that burden, the financial burden of that for somebody. But that said, how do you create a family or community trust?
Yeah.
3 steps here to get you started.
I just wanted to share, I think one of the things we want to definitely think about with all of these is that the purpose of these is not a handout, it's a hand up. It is, you mentioned this idea of what these things can do, what these contributions or donations or scholarships or grants or trusts, what they really can do is put somebody in a position to actually grow wealth for themselves, and then they can multiply the effort that you're putting. So maybe your $1,000 scholarship helps that student so that eventually they can create 2 $1,000 scholarships or 5 $1,000 scholarships. So really look at this as a way to exponentially grow wealth in our community for these future generations.
Yeah, I mean, just think about it. If you were able to give enough money to an LGBTQ plus family so that they could put down 20% for a down payment on a home, as long as they're able to meet the monthly mortgage payment, that could be a huge leg up for them, because gives that LGBTQ plus family a place to live, creates some the word I'm looking for, stability for that particular family. And then of course, the longer they stay in the home, the more equity that they're possibly able to build, then they can reinvest to buy a bigger or a nicer home, or move to a neighborhood with a better in a better school district, or what have you. So that said, the 3 steps to be able to start a family or community trust, not all that different from number 1, and none of these are really going to be all that different, but we wanted to make sure we gave you actionable steps. The first is define the trust purpose and the beneficiaries. You want to clearly outline the purpose of the trust, such as supporting younger LGBTQ plus people for specifically something such as home ownership, education, or a business venture. Step 2 is to choose a trustee or legal structure. You want to ensure that, like I said before, that your complies with state and federal laws and aligns with what your long-term goals are, right? We all have heard those nightmare stories where a nonprofit was supposed to help the community or a community, and then all of a sudden it turns out that they're really helping other people that it's not necessarily intended for. Then step number 3 is to fund the trust, and that can be done, as David said, immediately. You don't have to wait until you pass away. You can start funding that now and start accumulating that wealth to be able to transfer to somebody else sooner rather than later. But of course, it can also be funded by your estate when you do pass away. Again, the good news is you don't have to recreate the wheel. Some of these entities already exist, such as the Gill Foundation, Arcus Foundation, and Astria Lesbian Foundation for Justice.
All right, a third suggestion here is to offer low interest loans or microfinancing. Oftentimes, this really does help individuals who are right at that beginning phase, right? This micro loans are specifically for entrepreneurs, and the other types of loans can help individuals with starting a business, buying that first home. But this is slightly different because you yourself are basically acting as a bank to help these individuals, especially if you're offering at a low interest. This again is similar to the others. You're going to want to determine what your criteria is. You're going to want to secure that funding, whether you're setting aside money in a specific account for this so that you can do that, how you're going to go through the process of screening these individuals, or partnering with a financial institution or platform that is already doing this. Again, There are organizations out there that can help you do this and are already doing this. Start Out is a great organization that helps LGBTQ entrepreneurs, and they have a growth lab where you can donate money that they disseminate then to individuals that they are screening to say, yes, this is a valid LGBTQ business owner and they are starting a valid business. We want to support them. The National LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce, or NGLCC, does also have a business development grant. You can donate to that grant and have that money go out as they check individuals for the criteria. And then there's also the Community Reinvestment Fund. And that, again, is just another way for you to give your money to these individuals or these organizations, and then you don't have to do the screening or deciding where or how the money goes out.
Exactly. Number 4 is to invest in LGBTQ plus startups or small businesses. And I think Dave and I have talked about this for quite a while, and I feel like this is the one that we're most attracted to because of our experiences in entrepreneurship, that we would love to be able to provide the seed investments for startups to be able to grow their business. Basically, what you would become as an angel investor or a venture capitalist for an LGBTQ plus youth-led or initially newly started out startup or business to generate wealth within the community and empowering more young entrepreneurs, become independent, and then hopefully that, breeds more entrepreneurs and keeps more wealth within the LGBTQ plus community. This one, I think, inspires us the most. But the 3 steps to follow to be able to get this started are to 1, research the LGBTQ plus entrepreneurs or the startups that you want to invest in. Unfortunately, not all small businesses, not all startups are the same. A lot of people have a lot of high hopes and they're passionate about starting something, but you want to make sure that you're investing your money in people or an organization that has the greatest chance of turning that into a profit for themselves, so that you're not just giving money away and maybe losing it in the long run. You want to set what your investment budget is. How much are you able to donate to how many different startups each year or each quarter? You kind of want to set some parameters and goals for yourself. And then you want to conduct some due diligence. You want to you don't want to just hand your money off and not do your homework to see if this money is being used wisely or in according to what your goals are. This is still a grant or a donation, so to speak, and you want to make sure that money is being used wisely and people aren't, over a period of years ending up using the money that you give them to start some nefarious organization or get into some nefarious activities or what have you.
Or you may find somebody who meets the true definition of a nefarious capitalist, and they start an organization and they're taking 95% of the profits so that they can drive a fancy car, live in a nice home. Not that it's wrong to have a nice car and a nice home, but if they're doing that with your money and to the detriment of the business, then that's probably not the best use of your money.
That's a red flag.
Yeah.
And again, good news, some of these organizations already exist. We've had Arlen Hamilton of Backstage Capital on the Queer Money podcast a couple of times. You can invest in her venture capitalist fund. There's also the Tory Burch Foundation Fellows Program that you can invest into, or Queer to Stay, an LGBTQ plus business preservation initiative.
Yeah, I think one of the important things to remember about this is that a lot of these types of organizations, such as GayGenx or the Tory Burch or Queer to Stay, they're going to have they're going to require you to be an accredited investor. Accredited investor basically comes down to, do you earn $250,000 a year or more as an individual, or as a couple, do you earn over $350,000 a year, or do you have investable assets of $1 million or more? Many of us don't qualify for that. The nice thing with Backstage is Backstage actually has there have been recent changes in IRS requirements for and SEC requirements for these types of investments, and they've created a fund that allows you to invest without having to be an accredited investor. So you can do this at a smaller dollar amount, like $5,000, $10,000, $50,000.
Number 5, Mr. Alton Schneider.
All right. So number 5 is to support collective investments through LGBTQ real estate co-ops. We know that there are a lot of individuals right now, especially boomers and Gen Xers, who are thinking about retirement and asking, where can I retire? where it's safe for me to still be out. And one of the reasons why that question keeps coming up is because most retirement locations across the United States, in warmer locations especially, are not LGBTQ friendly. And so we are starting to see an interest in individuals actually creating these types of real estate co-ops. And this is really what really happens here is individuals come together and they pool their money and they invest in some real estate, whether it's a home, an apartment complex, a whole neighborhood. They purchase this with the idea of LGBTQ folks either living there or using the profits from renting those properties as a way to help other individuals in the community, or that they themselves help them build wealth that they can then pass on.
This is probably over the years that we've been doing the Queer Money podcast. This is, and the various people we've talked to, real estate investors, entrepreneurs, millionaires, what have you. This is probably the one that comes up the most when people are talking about how they could best utilize their money.
Yeah.
So many people say, I would love to create a community, a housing, a neighborhood or whatever that's for LGBTQ plus people. And, I've heard people talking about, we would have like a dozen homes and each home would be painted one of the colors of the rainbow. And,
Yeah.
this is probably the one that gets talked about the most. And as we've done episodes about LGBTQ plus communities around the country, the last time that we've done our research, there were only 22. So this is probably one of the ones that's also needed the most.
Exactly. Again, there are a couple of steps you would want to take. First, you need to find other individuals who would want to do something like this, who would want to create something like this. So find that group of individuals, create the legal structure that allows for everyone to participate in this in a fair and honest way, and then raise the capital, whether that's something you do plan on after you pass going into something like this, or you doing it right now. Again, good news, there are organizations that are working on things like this. Stonewall Community Development Corporation is one, Kerry Gardens Cooperative in the UK, and Open House San Francisco is another one. These organizations have built the structure that allows individuals to invest or donate money into these organizations that are already starting to try to build these kinds of real estate portfolios or whole buildings in some case.
So you may be asking, how is a scholarship different from a grant, different from a family trust, different from a community trust? Which is better and which should I choose? Ultimately, we highly suggest that you talk with an attorney, an accountant, or a financial planner to help figure out what it is you want to do and the best legal structure for you and what it is that you want to do. These aren't blanket. This is not a blanket recommendation by any means, but basically the overall differences between or among all of these is scholarships are typically awarded to individuals, usually students, based on merit, need, or other criteria, such as being a member of the LGBTQ plus community. And that's typically for education. Grants are funds given for a specific purpose, which can vary widely from education, similar to a scholarship, but also going to research or to community projects or to start a business. A family trust is a legal arrangement where assets, money, property, etc., what have you, are held and managed for the benefit of a family member. Typically, you're looking at a bloodline, but there are other ways that you can get around that legally, and that is something that you want to talk to an attorney about. And then a community trust is often called a community foundation, and this is a charitable organization that manages and distributes funds to support a broad range of local causes such as education, health, and services. Why would you want to choose your own over one of the ones that we've mentioned that already exist, and of course the myriad ones that are out there? Well, it might be that you want to leave some sort of a legacy and you want to make sure that you have your name or your brand on a trust or a scholarship so that people remember you after you pass on. It might be that you don't think any of the entities that currently exist do it right exactly, and you think you have a better way of doing it. There could be a number of reasons why you might want to choose your own path, but just remember, you don't have to recreate the wheel. There are ones that exist out there, and if one suits you, then just give more of your money to one of those existing organizations, because no doubt they need it.
Right. So to recap, there are 5 different ways that you can actually help build generational wealth in the community. Create an LGBTQ LGBTQ focused wealth building scholarship or grant. You can start your own family or community trusts. 3, you can offer low interest loans or microfinancing. 4, you can invest in LGBTQ startups or businesses. And 5, you can support collective investments for LGBTQ real estate co-ops.
With that, we'll be right back. With no fees or minimums and no overdraft fees, banking with Capital One is the easiest decision in the history of decisions. That's banking reimagined. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One, N.A., member FDIC.
Thank you again for joining us for another episode. Remember to get your Career Money Takeaway and the resources, all of those organizations that we talked about,
resources.
right? We will have links to all of those that we mentioned in this week's newsletter. Remember, you can sign up for that by clicking the link in your podcast player, or you can get it by clicking or
Scanning the
QR code on this video.
Then join us this Thursday for your next assignment in the How Gays Retire Fabulously bonus series, and next Tuesday when LGBTQ plus financial advisor Jake Scalhorn joins us to discuss the 2025 401k plan changes that you need to know about. Thank you and have a great week. Bye.
Bye.